Welcome to the Innovation and Technology Halftime Report.
Agriculture has been through many changes over the course of America's history and continues to make changes as time advances. Agriculture began with mainly farming tools, such as axes, sickles, and rakes. But as time progressed, Americans needed far more productive tools to accomplish what they wished to happen. One big example would be the cotton gin. This tool allowed seeds to be removed from cotton very easily and in turn created less work for people. Unfortunately, slavery was popular around this time, and the cotton gin created more reason to have slaves, as the cotton industry only grew more from this invention. Another big invention was the mills, specifically cotton mills. Mills allowed things such as cotton to be spun without human interaction, some early mills being powered by animals and water wheels. Some mills were also used for grinding wheat, corn, and other agricultural products. Even as far down the road as 1854, Americans created things such as the oil drills, which would lead a lot of success for America later on. Humans have come a long way, modernizing and creating more agriculture technology the further time moves. But not only was agriculture a huge part of this time period, as medicine also made huge strides. Now over to Alia for the medicine.
Medical advances are among some of the most important innovations throughout history. Dating back to the 1500s, tobacco was the first plant that the Creator gave to the Native American tribes in the Great Lakes region. Due to its cherished nature, it was used for many issues varying from snake bites to asthma. The Native Americans depended on tobacco, and by the early 1600s, it had spread through trade to all across Europe. Besides tobacco, different natural remedies had begun to develop from unusual sources. Spiderwebs, bear grease, goose fat, and skunk oil were all common treatments for various ailments. These were all practices taken from Native Americans and adopted into European culture. During the 1700s, medical plants had continued to prosper even though the business was changing. Formal medical practices were opened by doctors who had studied in that field. In fact, Edward Jenner, an educated English physician, created the smallpox vaccine thanks to his extensive experiments and studies. One advertisement for a medicine called chlorodyne was, quote, the most wonderful and valuable remedy ever discovered, end quote, despite the fact that it was made from chloroform, morphine, and alcohol. Besides patent medicines, more innovations had popped up. In 1818, the first successful human transfusion was completed. More anesthetics were introduced as well, such as ether and nitrous oxide, which are still used today. Medicine and its technology has ever only continued throughout history, and even today we still have a long way to go. I'm sure that in the future lots of medical advances will be made, allowing many more precise and accurate operations along with diagnosis.
From the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, many advancements were made in weaponry and war tactics. In the Revolutionary War, the main weapon used was the musket. Muskets are single-shot guns that were very inaccurate and only had a range of maybe 50 yards. Each musket had a bayonet. Muskets were still effective due to the tactics used during the war. The British and Americans both used linear tactics on the battlefield. Linear tactics were when both sides line up rank by rank in horizontal rows and fire at the same time. Each row would directly aim at one target, but aim in the general direction of the enemy, and the amount of balls fired by each group would maximize the potential of hitting the enemy. Americans also used a tactic called guerrilla warfare against the British. The problem with conventional linear tactics is the lack of cover. America not being nearly as skilled as Britain at linear tactics, they used guerrilla warfare to gain the edge on the battlefield. Guerrilla warfare is when the Americans would hide behind cover scattered around the vulnerable British and fire at them. The War of 1812 had very similar weapons and tactics that the Revolutionary War had. However, there were some innovations. America manufactured its first weapon, the Springfield 1795 musket. This musket was slightly better than Britain's outdated musket, the Brown Bess. Due to the fact that not many advancements in weaponry happened from the Revolutionary War to the War of 1812, there were not many advancements in tactics either. During the Civil War, lots of innovation occurred. Before the Civil War, rifles were an uncommon weapon because of how hard they were to reload. This changed when the mini-ball was invented. The mini-ball was a smaller sized bullet and different shape, which made it much easier and quicker to reload. With this invention, the rifle became the main weapon of the Civil War. Another very deadly weapon invented was the Gatling gun, which was one of the first automatic weapons ever invented, and only the North had access to it. Another invention made was guns being able to shoot multiple rounds at once. These were called repeating rifles. Again, only the North had access to these weapons, which is one of the main reasons they won the war. Because of the rifle's increased range and accuracy, people changed the way they fought in the Civil War. The two sides would fight much further apart and dig trenches to protect themselves from the advanced weaponry. Also, with the invention of the camera, the Civil War was the first war in history to be captured by the photo. Because of all this new technology in such a short period of time, the Civil War was one of the most deadly wars in U.S. history. In the next half, I believe a lot of advancements will be made in weaponry and war tactics. I believe automatic weapons will be the norm in warfare, and maybe even a weapon of mass destruction will be invented. Here I pass you on to my sideline reporter, Blake Pradko.
Transportation in the Great Lakes region has evolved a lot because of American innovation. It started out with natives walking, riding horses, and paddling canoes. Natives used birch bark canoes to travel on streams, rivers, and even on this very lake. Settlers made and used wagons, buggies, and stagecoaches, similar to the ones found in Europe, and dirt roads became more plentiful. In 1807, Robert Fulton made the first successful steamboat. Many doubted he could do it. Robert Fulton himself even said, "I almost repented my efforts." After many years of hard work, Robert Fulton revolutionized transportation, and he managed to bring the shipping costs down over 90%. In the late 1790s, George Washington started a canal building initiative. The first canals are very small, like this one, but 30 years later, the very large Erie Canal was built. This canal was over 300 miles long and connected New York City to the Great Lakes. Canal transportation was short-lived, unfortunately, as it peaked in the 1850s. The peak and then the decline of canal shipping was due to the increasing popularity of railroad transportation. The first railroad connected Baltimore to the Great Lakes region, specifically the Ohio River. Railroads made Mount Clemens bigger than the canal town of Frederick. In 1830, the first American-made steam engine, Tom Thumb, designed by Peter Cooper, began service on the B&O Railway. The use of trains grew quickly because you could ship heavier loads at a lower cost and faster than that of a steamboat. Train tracks were also less expensive to build than canals. That's where we are, with awesome trains and tracks everywhere. But I can't help to think that if a smaller and lighter engine was invented, then buggies and carriages could be powered without horses, and it would revolutionize transportation once more. One day, air travel might even be possible. That's all for the American Innovation Halftime Show. Enjoy the second half.